that the government prefers we not talk about. Our journalist, Patrick Henningsen, editor of 21st Century Wire, and Scott Ritter, former United States Marine Corps counterintelligence officer, UN weapons inspector, author, and pundit. The latest news on Iran this morning, or this evening rather, is that Trump has followed his advisor's counsel not to conduct a threatened massive strike at this time against Iran because the U.S. does not have enough interceptor missiles and because of a realization that Iran's retaliation would cause a global economic catastrophe. Gentlemen, Scott and Patrick, welcome to the show. Patrick, when I'm reading all of those statements from Trump administration officials about terrorism and the existence of communists and the Cuban network, my head is spinning. I don't know where they're getting this from. Nobody sees this. What exactly, in your view, is going on? Why are they, at this time in particular, drumming up this complete fantasy? As Truman said, it was a field day for the professional patriots. All nonsense. Seems even worse now.
All right, Joe. Look, if we have to call out all of this sort of wrung out, redundant tropes that this current government and also previous administrations run through on a daily basis, I mean, we'd never be done. This is just another one. They've just picked up off the shelf and repurposed it. And I mean, there's 100 different ways you can look at this. The whole point, just quickly, the whole point of COINTELPRO and that program was a lot of the terrorist attacks. And that program didn't end, by the way. That's another bigger conversation, which we don't have time for. A lot of the terrorist attacks and thwarted extremist attacks were government informants or featured handlers, informants, or something like that, agent provocateurs. That's the whole point of it, is that it's a self-generating system. And again, we can go into that. But more than that, this is the establishment wanting to catch what is, because people are being pushed to the fringes, either to the far left or the far right, totally disenchanted and divorced from the centrist uniparty. So anything that's on the near fringe, like democratic socialists, they want to make it more establishment friendly. So they want to push them to the center. And these are tactics which are designed to do that. And ditto with, the far right. I'm talking about AfD in Germany is a good example. They've become an establishment friendly, and as does the National Rally in France. It's becoming a tool of the establishment. And this is a process, the Borg, as it were. The establishment will eventually do to everybody. But yeah, so that's my general thoughts on that. I mean, there's a lot that you can say about it. But the other thing I'll say, Joe, is that where is this coming from? And you also have to look at what they call far left and think pro-Palestinian, sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist. That's how this matrix is being designed from this point of view. So I would think the Israeli lobby are behind many things, including these types of efforts, because Marco Rubio is front-running this. He also front-ran the ending of the First Amendment on U.S. college campuses and did it under the sort of false pretext of these are pro-Hamas protests by students, which is just beyond disingenuous and actually fraudulent and anti-constitutional, and a direct attack on the First Amendment in full view of everybody. And I think this is along the same lines and perhaps by some of the same powers.
You raised an interesting point about sting operations. They are part and parcel of this. The FBI creates these plots. There was one, I was living in Riverdale in the North Bronx, and it was a synagogue right next to my apartment. And one night, the incredible number of police were there. Then the mayor showed up, and the police chief, and the FBI New York director. And what had happened was somebody supposedly put a bomb next to this synagogue. And I questioned the head of the New York police office that night. And he admitted to me that they had got a guy, they sent him up to upstate New York and infiltrated this group and created the plot and gave them the bomb and drove them over there. And at the last minute, they gave him $50,000 and marijuana. It came out in the trial later. The whole thing was an FBI plot. Even the judge admitted that. So we have to keep that to consideration. And the other point is the Miller said that we have to treat these leftist terrorists that are running around the U.S. cities like jihadists are reviled. Well, that means the U.S. government will work with the leftist terrorists then, given how closely the U.S. has worked with extreme terrorist groups like the Contras in Nicaragua, like Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, like Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, even an extreme left group the U.S. and Britain supported.
Like the IDF, Joe, like the IDF.
Like the idea. Scott, is this something we should be concerned about, or is it just a bunch of nonsense that they're talking? It is nonsense, but it's dangerous in their hands, is it?
Well, first of all, let's point out that the COINTELPRO, as Patrick said, has never ended. Today, we would just call it the National Security Division of the FBI. They have a tool set. It's a tool set that's been approved by the United States Congress. Congress turns a blind eye. The judiciary has allowed it to exist without question. It's a tool set that's been enhanced by various pieces of legislation that have been put forward under the guise of the Patriot Act and things since 9/11. Joe, I lived this. Okay, we're not talking about theory here. This isn't unique to the Trump administration. This is an American government tactic. You say information terrorist. In 2022, Chuck Schumer, my senator, helped push forward legislation in the United States Congress that funded a Center for Countering Disinformation in Ukraine. This was organized by the Ukrainian government with the direct assistance of the State Department and other U.S. government agencies. Under the direct supervision of the State Department, one of the first meetings convened by this Center for Countering Disinformation published a blacklist of journalists around the world, including American journalists, who are considered to be information terrorists. You see, Trump didn't invent this word, Joe. Information terrorist. And then they passed forward again in a special session brokered by the State Department. They said that information terrorists must be treated the same way as we would regular terrorists, jihadists, meaning I was marked for death by the Ukrainian government. And I have been marked for death. Joe, they have tried to kill me several times with funding from the United States government. This is straight up. You want to know why they seized my passport? Because the Ukrainian government told them to seize my passport. The search warrant that the FBI directed against my house has two classified probable cause and what they expect to find. Why are they classified? Because it was written by the Ukrainian government, given to the FBI. But when I say written by the Ukrainian government, it was written by the FBI field office in Kiev, given to the FBI field office, and then given to the Department of Justice to create a search warrant to come at my house. They debanked me, Joe. They debanked me. Every tool you said that the Trump administration is getting ready to use against so-called left-wing radical information terrorists, they used against me. So this is an American problem. This isn't a Trump administration problem. It's a problem that the National Security Division of the FBI has run wild, run crazy. These are the guys that went after Donald Trump. These are the guys that manufactured Russiagate. These are the guys that have done a whole bunch of other things. And you can't shut them down. It's like the CIA's Directorate of Operations. Everybody says they want to reform, but you can't reform that which you don't know. And the FBI's National Security Division is as corrupt as the day is long. They are out there violating the constitutional rights of American citizens every single day. The only reason why they stopped going after me is that the foreign agent influence that they manufactured was the same thing they tried to pin on Trump. And so because Trump got a pass, I got a pass. I got a pass because I'm innocent. You know, they took everything in my frickin' house, everything in my frickin' house. And you know this, that if there was anything wrong with me, anything, not just the foreign agent, anything, if I had hiccuped at the wrong time, they would have arrested me. They had an open grand jury investigation, Joe. They subpoenaed my tax records. They went after everything. They seized my bank records. If there was, for all you people out there that say I'm funded by Russia, stick it in your ear. All right? My finances have been scrubbed by the National Security Division of the FBI trying to put me away for frickin' life. And they didn't. But the only reason why, that doesn't mean they won't do it. It's just that Trump got shrouded with the Russia thing. And so they made the Russia thing go away. But here's the problem. All these people are going to be called foreign agents. This is the biggest problem we have right now, this Foreign Agent Registration Act. It is literally a cover for suppression of free speech. It's a cover for suppression of political opposition. It is the most ridiculous thing in the world. First of all, Israel is the largest foreign agent out there, and they own all of America, and we're not prosecuting them. The British are a huge foreign agent. They actively conspire against America. We don't go after them. It's something that is selectively applied to people when you want to shut them up. And this is the America we live in. This isn't a Trump administration invented by Donald Trump thing. Stephen Miller didn't wake up and say, I want to start calling people information terrorists. It's a national security division tactic that's been used for a long time to shut people up, to intimidate people, to silence people, and it's going to be used again. And until the American people wake up, this is why I tell everybody, read your damn Constitution. Understand, read the Federalist Papers, understand the importance of free speech and due process and all these things that I can't say we take for granted, because not a single American, it seems, understands what this is about. You can't take for granted something that you don't know. And the American people don't know their rights. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know what this nation is supposed to stand for. And they sit back there and say, well, those silly radical left-wing people. And you know what? They can turn it on you in a heartbeat. The moment they decide that your voice is inconvenient, the same tools they're using to shut down the people that you may not agree with politically will be turned against you. Free speech is free speech, and it's absolute. 100% absolute, and we need to protect it. This is why, in the good old days of free speech, the ACLU would defend the Ku Klux Klan's right to rally in town, not because they supported the Ku Klux Klan, they despised the Ku Klux Klan, but the Ku Klux Klan had a right to rally. Everybody has a right to speak. Everybody has a right to publish, and yet they're going to shut it down because of what? It's a fear tactic. There's no threat to America from any ideology. There is none, if the Americans believed in their Constitution. Because what is the antidote to bad ideas? Better ideas. For all the people out there saying, oh, their ideas suck, then come up with a better idea. And then use your free speech to articulate this better idea. And then engage in debate, discussion, and dialogue. That's the American way, to give everybody a hearing and let the better ideas prevail. The fact that the Trump administration is going this route is proof positive they don't have an idea. They don't have an ideal, and they recognize this. And so the only way they can continue to survive, because they can't articulate what they stand for and what they believe in and what they're trying to do, is to suppress those who speak out against them.
It's a bit hypocritical, as you pointed out, Scott, that it was Trump himself who was a victim to this thing, and now they've turned around. And this is Trump's version of this. I'm just curious about the timing. You raised your hands, Patrick. You were also involved on a list.
Yeah, three lists actually. All the hit lists, the kill lists, but one of them boasts about USAID funding right on their website, and I'm going to say that whole cosplay with Elon Musk and Doge and defunding USAID. I think the record will show by the end of this president's term, based on initial reports that we've been seeing in recent months, that the funding to the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID and all these stalwart soft power, smart power programs is going up. They're pouring more money into these things. So, by the way, Thomas Massie, Tulsi Gabbard on some of these Ukrainian hit lists as well. So it's just, to me, just unbelievably crazy that this would be allowed to one call from Washington and those websites would be down. They're just an abomination, but they're allowed to fester, and they've morphed into all these other spin-offs. And so I know Scott's probably knows about more of them, but I know I'm on at least 3 of them. But I mean, that's me as a journalist, as an independent journalist, but there's elected U.S. officials on those websites, which should be unacceptable. No matter what party you're from, or no matter who the president or the administration is. So, I mean, I just pointed that out, because all this talk about, oh, Elon came in with the chainsaw and cut out USAID and all that stuff. No, it's completely false.
Can I just throw in on the USAID stuff? what they cut out was USAID was one of the most corrupt programs ever, not just ideologically corrupt because it doesn't promote freedom. It's used as a soft power regime change tool. My wife's from the Republic of Georgia, and what USAID has done to Georgia is despicable. I mean, tried to destroy a culture from within. That's the USAID model. It's a soft power model that uses the Peace Corps to, and my daughter served in the Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps is honorable, but the Peace Corps, every project that they promote in the Peace Corps is funded by USAID. And it's a way of getting these nice young kids to come in and say, hi, we're friendly Americans. We're here to help you. And here, let's get you addicted to USAID heroin money. And everybody goes, oh, God, it's great. I'm shooting up the free USAID money. And now they get addicted to it. And next thing you know, the big boys step in, which means it's the front for the CIA that's running the whole damn thing. So USAID is corrupt. But, you know, USAID was used by the Democrats to create nepotistic funding mechanisms so that wives could have $1 million, side jobs, selling, sex toys to Afghan women, something of that nature, some ridiculous stuff like this. And so what they did is they came in and they identified these. They said, this is the corruption. They weeded it out. All they've replaced it now is with Republicans doing the same thing. It's the hypocrisy is the word, but the Republican Party under Donald Trump has become as despicably corrupt as the Democratic Party was under Obama and Biden. It's the same thing, just different flavors. And this just speaks volumes of this nation. Joe, I get more and more depressed every day because you see things that the average American, I mean, we know the difference between right and wrong. We know the difference between good and evil. We know it inherently, and yet we are tolerant of so many things we know to be wrong. Look, we sit there and turn a blind eye at a president, committing insider trading fraud on a massive scale on a daily basis, and everybody's like, well, that's okay because the president says that's okay. It's not okay, and we're allowing this kind of fraud. It just, the whole system is corrupt. I mean, at some point in time, you got to put it to sleep. It's not about curing it; it's about ending the suffering, ending in agony. How can we save this democratic experiment? And it was an experiment. Ben Franklin was asked, "What kind of republic we have, or what kind of government we have? A republic if we can keep it." Well, we lost it; it's gone, and I don't know if we're ever going to find it because the American people are sleepwalking. I see it on a daily basis. Good people. My neighbors are good people. Really, they are good people. And yet they're sleepwalking by just turning a blind eye to all the wrongdoing that's happening. And what Patrick said about USAID, it's just a fraud. It's just a straight up fraud. You're 100% right, Patrick, about Doge being eye candy, a little distraction while the corruption continues. They just have painted it with a different brush, made it a different color, but it's the same thing.
Well, this is why we invite you on the show to lighten your mood, Scott, so you don't get further depressed. You can get it off your chest here. Patrick, two things concern me. One, Cuba. There's no question that Rubio has got I don't want to use this word, but he's got something for Cuba. He's had it all his life from Cuba, hates Castro with a passion, the whole thing. He is a gusano par excellence. They got one in the State Department. The State Department came out with this absurd report in which Cuba is running parts of the United States. This country can barely feed itself right now based on the U.S. pressure. And they are a threat, just the way Russia's a threat. Well, not exactly, but something like Russia being a threat to Europe. So this false threat of Cuba, clearly they seem to have Cuba targeted. Now, the problems that we're going to talk about Iran in depth in a moment, but the problems that they're having in Iran, will that deter them at all from engaging in Cuba? Or will they try to get out of Iran so they can go to Cuba, in your view?
I don't know, Joe, you sound like a Havana syndrome denialist. I'm not sure, but anyway, so Marco Rubio, he has so many job titles. He's National Security Advisor. He's the Secretary of State. He's also Viceroy of Cuba and Caracas. That's pretty impressive LinkedIn profile for Marco. No, clearly this is a total departure from international law, from years of precedent law, of treaties, of United Nations Charter. You know, what the U.S. have done to Cuba is just blatant, an act of war by laying siege to the country. I'm not even talking about 75 years of sanctions. I'm talking about the blockade which the Trump administration did. And one of the reasons they went for Venezuela was to first to cut off the supply to Cuba, also to send a message to other countries, including Mexico and other potential allies of Cuba, that you're not going to be giving any fuel or any assistance or any provisions at all, even basic humanitarian provisions to Cuba. What did Cuba ever do to the United States but embarrass it? Really, that's its only original sin, is it embarrassed the United States at the Bay of Pigs, and just by surviving is a huge embarrassment to the U.S. So Cuba hasn't done anything to America, but Rubio and others talk them up like this is some evil, bloodthirsty regime that's eating babies and so forth. If you want to see what the extreme end of the propaganda looks like, just look at all the things they've been saying about Cuba right back to the Spanish-American War, if you really want to go all the way back. But it's just the same thing. So the war crime of Venezuela is unbelievable. That's just been brushed under the rug by everybody, and every single person in the administration is complicit in that and guilty. And where's the money gone, by the way? What they've done to Venezuela is running all of their oil sales through a U.S. Treasury account. What $18 billion so far? Like, where has it gone? Nobody knows where it's gone. Nobody, it hasn't been audited. And
Wasn't it
for
in a
all we
bank in
know,
Qatar? Wasn't it in Doha somewhere?
I don't know. It could be
Yeah.
in World Liberty Financial stable coins in Abu Dhabi for all we know. We don't know. So, but the point is, this is what they did to Iraq after the war. They ran their whole economy through a Federal Reserve account. So if the Iraqi government ever goes off the reservation, they can just flip the switch. That's a huge sword of Damocles hanging over Iraq, that it can never be sovereign. And that, in a certain way, controls Middle East geopolitics, because Iraq can't say we're closing our airspace. They can't say, no, no one's going to be using our airspace nor the KRG to attack or do anything against the Iranians. They can't do that. They can't go that far to evict the United States officially from all of their sort of encampments and positions in their territory. They can't, because of this thing that's been set up right at the point of the Iraq War after 2003. And they want to do the same thing to Venezuela. They would like, Trump said he's going to do it to Iran. Good luck with that. Good luck with that one. It's not going to happen. But they've threatened that. So that's the U.S.'s idea of how they're going to control in the post-petrodollar era, through coercion, force, threats, protection rackets, blackmail. This is how they're going to collect tribute for the empire, basically. And so, I mean, I honestly think if they go for Cuba with a ground invasion or whatever, I mean, it would be just, for Hegseth, it would be a wet dream, of course, and for Fox News. But I think that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, ultimately, of the Trump administration and the United States. I mean, the optics on that would just be horrible globally. And the irony is, it would be that weak neighbor near abroad that would be the straw that breaks the back of the great U.S. empire. That's just me in my sort of interpretation of that.
It would be Bay of Pigs 2.0. But I think that creating this fear and trying to create this fear in the American public that Cuba has got this extensive network and that is very similar, as I was saying, to what the Europeans are saying about Russia, because they want to go to war with Russia by 2029, but they need their people to be afraid and believe that Russia's about to attack. When at the same time they're ridiculing Russia for not being able to take the Donbass after 4 years, so all of a sudden they're going to be in Paris by Christmas. Scott, do you see an invasion of Cuba or a bombing of Cuba or some kind of attempt to overthrow the government and finally get the big prize Rubio's been dreaming about all his life?
I mean, to answer that question, I'd have to know what the CIA knows about Cuba. As you know, before Venezuela, I said I don't believe the United States is going to put boots on the ground in Cuba in a large way. That I believe that the United States, the CIA would come in and buy off people, and that we would take Maduro, and that's exactly what we did. With Cuba, we're setting them up for the I don't think it would be a Venezuela type exercise, but I think it would be a Panama type exercise.
Mm.
A large scale military operation designed to take out the regime and those things that are immediately holding the regime together. If it works and the CIA's bought off the right people, I think that the Cuban operation could be over in very soon, in a matter of a week. If it doesn't work, then we have a Black Hawk Down type situation where American troops, because we're not going to go in with overwhelming occupation type forces, American troops would be stuck. It would be an embarrassment, a humiliation. We don't have a big enough army to physically invade Cuba. That's just the way it is. If the Cubans have the revolutionary spirit and they want to resist, we can't take them. And Patrick's right. If we tried to, it would be the utter humiliation of the United States. It's so. This is the tough part. I used to believe there were smart people in the U.S. government. People who would say, "Nah, it's a bad idea. Not going to do it." Look, the smart people in the Pentagon talked Donald Trump out of, responding after a U.S. drone was shot down over the Strait of Hormuz in his first term. Trump wanted to retaliate, hit Iranian air defense sites, and people say, "Yeah, but if you do that, they're going to strike back, and you're going to strike back." We get a cycle of escalation. Next thing we know, they've shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and we can't take it. That's the funny thing, Donald Trump. We never knew that we couldn't take the Strait of Hormuz. You're lying, Donnie, baby. They told you couldn't take the Strait of Hormuz back in your first term, and you backed down because you understood that if they did take the Strait of Hormuz, it would take you 9 to 15 months to mobilize the 800,000 to 1.2 million troops it would take to actually take the Strait of Hormuz. So anybody who talks about we're going to invade Carg Island, we're going to do this, I'm just telling you right now, Joe, it isn't going to happen. For us to take the Strait of Hormuz is a 1,000,000-man operation, and we don't have 1,000,000 men. Not that we could deploy there. So it's a pipe dream until we mobilize those troops. Taking Cuba is a 1,000,000-man operation, a 1,000,000-man operation if they resist. We may try a Panama Canal type thing with the 82nd Airborne, some Ranger battalions jumping in, seizing airfields, the Marines coming in, seizing some things, Delta Force and the SEALs coming in and whacking people. And if the CIA's bought off the right people, next thing you know, Cuba's fallen. The CIA is active. They're not even hiding it. The director of the CIA flew to Cuba to meet with people. So it's like, what do so I don't know. I don't know what the CIA knows. I don't know how far they've gone. They've been trying for years. But Cuba is a revolutionary government. There is a spirit of revolution in Cuba, that I think is more genuine than the spirit of revolution that was in Venezuela. Because apparently, the spirit of revolution hasn't manifested itself in some sort of revolutionary resistance to what the United States has done. Money talks. And sadly, that could be the case in Cuba too. So to me right now, I don't know which way this is going to go. I'm hoping that, we do have old Cuba hands. That's the one thing I can say is that over the years, we've gotten people in and close, and we've had some pretty accurate reporting about the situation. It used to be that it was recognized that, while there were, of course, political grumblings here and economic difficulties here, that overall Cuba was not conducive to, the Cuban government was not conducive to being removed easily. I'm hoping that those voices still resonate, but, we had wise voices tell the president that, killing Ali Khamenei was not going to generate regime change, but he did it anyways. Under the belief that it would generate regime change. So this is a president that lives in his own world of his art, and this is the danger of having a Marco Rubio as both the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. Secretary of State, he can be called before Congress and be scrutinized, have to defend his stance. National Security Advisor doesn't have to, and so this is why it's constitutionally questionable. He can do things as national security advisor that escape the purview of Congress. He can head up committees. And believe me, I can guarantee you right now in Washington, D.C., there are committees that are dedicated to, covert operations against Cuba to overthrow the regime that Congress knows nothing about. What kind of oversight is that? What kind of democracy do we have? But I don't know. This, like I said, in order to answer your question accurately, I need to know what the CIA knows about Cuba, and I don't.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I just wanted to comment on what Scott said and maybe get Scott's answer to that. I mean, in previous administrations, the vice president was always the sort of nominal head of the National Security Council. At least it had been like that in previous administrations. Not in this administration. And so Marco Rubio's kind of wearing that hat. J.D. Vance definitely is not wearing that hat. What do you think about that, Scott?
No, I think you're right, but that's one of the reasons why this happens is the National Security Council doesn't function as the National Security Council anymore. I mean, the National Security Council, we used to have a process, we used the interagency process. That's how policy was made, where the president would have an idea that would be articulated. The National Security Advisor would then organize a deputies meeting. And the vice president would oversee it, and they would sit there and talk about the idea that the deputies would form interagency groups, and they'd work it through down and bring it up, and then they'd come back and the deputies would brief it, they'd take it to the principals, which are the actual cabinet members, and then they take it to the president, and it would become official policy. We now have a president that wakes up in the morning, gets gas, and tweets, and that becomes a policy statement. We literally, a policy is made through social media postings. Now, I believe that there are some people in the National Security Council who are entrusted with overseeing the some of these social media posts. But that's the way policy is made right now. If I were a secretary of anything other than state and defense, I'd live in terror waking up in the morning trying to, go, oh my God. Normally the 9 o'clock meetings are boring in the morning. Hey guys, what are we doing? Well, we're just continuing to have interagency meetings to talk about this. Nope, the president put out a statement that fundamentally changes everything we're doing. Okay, now the right strategy is, okay, everybody take the day off and wait for the next tweet tomorrow, which probably cancel out what he tweeted today. But because that's the insanity of this, but we have policy by social media posting right now, and it's not coordinated policy. It's policy that is made within the inner circle of Donald Trump's world. Marco Rubio plays a role in this. I think Pete Hegseth continues to have the ability to do this. Mike Radcliffe also is playing a role. But, people like Sebastian Gorka, nobody talks about this guy, but he is literally one, and Stephen Miller. These are guys who are writing social media posts without any checks and balances, without any due diligence, without any effort at interagency process. They just write what they want, and because it's put out under the president's name, it becomes policy. So yeah, the vice president has been pushed aside, and he's an eyewitness to things. I think it's got to be pretty frustrating for him.
I wonder if Batista has a grandson waiting in the wings. I'm sure that Miriam Adelson wants to move her casinos back into Havana if given the opportunity.
Yeah, too bad Robert De Niro's aged out. He could do a reprise as some sort of gangster. And
yeah, and Sinatra's not around anymore to do guys and dolls. Anyway, Patrick, one last thing on this McCarthy issue before we move on to Iran and Ukraine, and that is this committee in the House that's looking into nonprofit media organizations and foreign funding. This was rumored and talked about even more than a year ago. Now it seems like it may be happening. You're incorporated in the UK. You're 21st Century Wire?
No, we're incorporated in the USA.
I see.
So yeah, and the FBI already have a file on us. So they got all the information they need.
How do you know that? Because I'd like to find out if they have one. How do you know that? Because I'd like to find out if Conservative News, if they have a file on us.
Let's just say that I was caught up in the Russian disinformation accusations, and they were just being nice and wanted to check up on us and see that
Hmm.
we're okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
Let's just leave it there. That's
considerate of them, huh?
yeah. Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I hope you told them where to go, but so this is a real concern then that they're maybe moving on this, that they're going to
Well,
try
yeah.
to
Well,
remove nonprofit status, which would destroy
Joe,
a lot of us.
do you know how the system works? They don't even do their homework. They rely on NewsGuard to run the profiling for them, and then they just can say, well, we're you're on NewsGuard, and so NewsGuard through it is as a private entity or not for profit run by Michael Hayden and people like this, and who's the former head of the DHS, John Ridge is his name, Ridge? Yeah,
Yeah,
Ridge.
the first
That's who.
DHS,
Tom,
Tom Ridge, yeah.
Tom Ridge. Okay, so they do all the doxing. They get college graduates to come in, do all the doxing, and then run the profiles up there. And the FBI agents just go and read NewsGuard, and that's how they do their shortlisting of things to paper their files to keep busy. I'm telling you how the system works.
Just to give them their side of the story, they claim that they are just advisors. Hayden, Ridge, Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia, is also on their board, and a former NATO Secretary General.
Hmm.
His name's escaped me. They claim that they're only advisors. They have no role whatsoever in the investigation, in the review of news organizations. That's
Yeah,
their
it's
claim.
that, and the other ones. There's unlimited amounts of these types of organizations, and they really mushroomed under
Right.
Trump 1.0, and then
Yeah.
under Biden
Yeah.
as well. And the State Department's funding a lot of them, and a lot of them were discredited with the Twitter files because that
Right.
was a good sort of purge of public information about a lot of these activities that were all being funded by the U.S. government or grants to academic institutions running all of these profiling. In fact, the University of Washington was the first to dox me, and I was even done in a Harvard Neiman Lab conference or project as a dangerous disinformation source, being too sympathetic to Russian and Syrian or Assad narratives and so forth for years, and that's all. Ultimately, the funding's coming from the government or from the defense industry, basically. And these are disinformation labs. There's plenty of them. It's not as in vogue though as it was a couple of years ago.
No, but we got a new iteration of this with Trump. What was that dashboard that was called? Jefferson dashboard?
Hamilton
Hamilton.
68. Yeah, I was on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so was I. My name was on it before I became editor conservative.
Yeah,
Because other
I
than
grew up
that,
in
I don't.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
I grew up in Hamilton, Massachusetts, so I thought that was kind of a
Ah,
nostalgic thing.
maybe that's how you got
Named
there.
after Alexander Hamilton, same guy.
Well, I grew up in New York City where Alexander Hamilton is buried right now. Maybe that's so down on Wall Street. Okay, let's move on to the latest news, which just broke a little before we went on the air, is that Trump has seen the light and he's been told by his advisors, don't do this massive attack against Iran that he threatened. Because, as the New York Times stupidly says, it could cause an economic crunch. How about a worldwide economic catastrophe? They call that a crunch, the New York Times. But more importantly, they're running out of Patriot missiles and other anti-missile defense, Scott. That is what the New York Times, anyway, says is the main reason why Trump has backed down. But they also admit that Iran, is not yielding, and they can't defeat Iran. That's the subtext of this article. What do you think's going on here? Why did Trump back down?
We ran out of ammunition.
Ran out of ammunition. That's simple.
It's this, but the thing is, Trump knew this. I mean, I've said this for some time. Trump gives away the farm. He's not very good at hiding things. When Trump says, "I think we're going to have a 3-week campaign," that's because somebody told him, "Mr. President, we have ammunition for 3 weeks." And then he said, and we're going to break this campaign down into 3 phases. Phase 1, it's going to be 1 week, and we're just going to sort of be like shock and awe. Like, we really got some bad stuff here. We're going to kick your ass, and if they don't do that, we move into phase 2. We're going to blow up bridges. We're going to blow up, power generation capability, and if they don't have that, then we're going to come in at phase 3, the big bombers. We're going to take everything out, and it's going to be annihilation. And I said, when that happened, I said, if phase 3, one of 2 things are going to happen. the United States will be compelled to back down, or we go to phase 4, which is we have to bring Israel in to follow on, because we're out. We won't be able to sustain the fight. We don't have the capability of doing this. We've been disguising a lot of things. If you take a look at where the most of the bombing has taken place is right along the coastline. And a lot of it isn't bombing, but actually using HIMARS and ATACMS missiles fired by the U.S. Army and Marines from positions in Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, to hit things. And then we've been using JDAMs, which we can. It's a satellite guided bomb, but we can basically stand off the coast of Iran, drop a JDAM, and it will glide in and be able to hit a coastal target. Now, to hit deeper in Iran, then we'll use what's left of our Tomahawks and our JASSMs and other standoff weapons. We're out of them. We used them all. They're done. Finished. We got nothing left. And here's the problem. Iran has everything left. And the other thing is, we don't know what we're bombing. I'm just going to straight up say that. When the postmortem? There's a big word. Marines shouldn't use them. When the postmortem is written about our targeting, you're going to find out we were over reliant upon AI, data mining to generate targets. We don't have experts on Iran, literally. I mean, look, Joe, I used to be a targeting guy. And I have to tell you, in order to do targeting the right way, the old school way, you had to be an expert. You had to actually know what the hell it was you're going to bomb. You had to know the weapons that you're going to use to bomb it. You had to put all it together, and you had to have the law, because you had to put it through a legal review to make sure that it didn't violate the law of war. Today, Hegseth, less legality, more lethality. That's his motto, and that's why we're committing war crimes on a daily basis. But we don't know what we're bombing. We're blowing up empty buildings. We're going after target definitions. We want to suppress the Iranian missile launch capability. Give me Iranian brigade headquarters. So Clyde goes around and pulls up something from 2006. It's an empty building now. Blow it up. Or it might be a school like Manab. Blow it up, kill it. We're not doing any harm to the Iranians. No harm is being done. They have evacuated everything about. I found out we were bombing Parchin the other night. Parchin, that's their missile factory outside of Tehran. If you think for a moment that anything of value is left in Parchin, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. You get a good deal. Everything's been evacuated. All these underground sites. We're talking about Fordo, which was bombed during the 12-Day War. It wasn't designed to be, an underground nuclear facility. It was designed to be an evacuation facility, one of hundreds of other facilities throughout Iran, dug into the mountains using deep boring technology, clearing it away so that you could evacuate things of importance. And Iran is full of these underground facilities, and they have taken everything of value and put them in there. And we're blowing up empty buildings. The Iranians will just simply pour more concrete, build new buildings, bring this out, put it up. They will reconstitute like this. Meanwhile, everything we've built in the Middle East over the course of the past several decades is being blown to smithereens. Radar systems worth our way of fighting war is so pathetic, because again, war is complicated business, and what we've done is we've tried to oversimplify it. We want to come in and we've tried to intimidate people with American technological supremacy. We have the biggest and the best weapons. We go faster, and we're invisible, and we're America, and we can do all this. There was a movie had a great song, America. Yeah, but you know the movie I'm talking about, the little puppet movie, Team America. But great theme song. But because it epitomizes the stupidity of America. So we build these systems that are designed to give us sort of information overload so that we can be impressive in the short phase. But what happens when the short phase doesn't dent the enemy, like Iran? And then they turn around, they blind us. They start blowing up our radars. Now we're blind, and our systems don't work, and our communications don't work. What happens when they found out that all you have to do is flood us? We have a system that can shoot 16 interceptor missiles. Well, if the Iranians fired 16 missiles and all 16 hit, it would look like it's good, but our missiles don't work, so that doesn't matter. But still, we could pretend. but the Iranians are firing a whole bunch more. We run out of missiles, and then they blow everything up. And it's game, set, match Iran. They own us right now. We're not being told this. The American people, they own the battlefield. They own every aspect of this war because they don't care about the bombs that are hitting Iran. They don't care. They're hitting things that we do care about. And now we were going to escalate. Ansarallah the other night fired 5 ballistic missiles into an Aramco refinery. Again, for all the people out there, I won't mention names, Gilbert Doctorow, who sit there and talk about, Ukrainian drones hitting Russian refineries. Oh my God, it's horrible. Look at the frickin' fires, guys. It's a tiny little flame. It's quickly put. I was an oil field firefighter, Joe. Okay, I've done this. I've gone in. I did a lot of stuff in the firefighting business. And the point is, it's standard operation. Look at the glow from the Saudi facility. Look at the giant fireball that's going. That's what happens when things go boom in an oil refinery. That thing ain't working forever. All right? When things go pop, 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 you get a little flame, some smoke, it gets turned off, it gets repaired. That's Russia. Ukraine has never made anything go boom in a Russian oil refinery. Ansarallah made things go boom in a Saudi, and it shut down. And the Saudi Arabians woke up and went, oh my God. And everybody else woke up and went, oh my God. And Trump woke up and went, oh my God. They're going to shut down everything. Yes, Mr. President, that's what they've said they're going to do. Shut everything down. And Kuwait's phoning it in going, we're running out of water. Desalinization done. Power generation done. We're about 3 more missile waves before we lose Kuwait. This is what happened. We lost this war. But we lost this war on day one. This was always a bluff. This was always a bluff because the president is advised by the world's dumbest people. The people who believe the propaganda of regime change. I don't claim to be anything. I study the region superficially, and I say superficially is I know what it takes to be an expert. There's a wonderful book called Outliers. I don't know if people read it, but it takes like 10,000 hours to become an expert. They talked about how the Beatles had to play in Hamburg before they became the Beatles, and all this kind of stuff. I know for me to be a firefighter, I had to put in 10,000 hours of firefighting and become a good firefighter. To be a Marine intelligence officer, 10,000 hours of actual, real world intelligence to do this kind of stuff. So when I talk about Islam, I know I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I was talking about Iran and the futility of regime change, and I mentioned. I said, if you don't know about Ali, Hassan, Hussein, and Karbala, then you don't understand anything about the reality of this region. Well, that resonated. I mean, I've been invited now to go on pilgrimages and to go and meet the senior Shia people in the world because they want to teach me about this. But I'm just an independent journalist. Our government that's making policy, they don't know anything about this. They don't even try, Joe. They don't even try to know. And we are so ignorant going forward. We are doing things that only make things worse for us. Why didn't they consult anybody in the oil industry before they went on this? I just came from a week-long meeting with oil experts. They easily could have told the president, don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. But he did it. These people surround themselves in this bubble of ignorance. Everybody advising the president is stupid. There's not a single expert within that window. They're just all Stephen Miller, Gorka lunatics who have ideology. But we lost this war on day one. I said that. I think I might have said it on your show. We lost it with the first 6 missiles we fired back at the beginning on February 28th. The first 6 missiles fired. The ones that hit Manab and the ones that hit Ali Khamenei. We lost the war at the second that happened because that proved we didn't know what we were doing. That proved that we were being governed by it. And everything that's come after that is proven that. I hope this time the president realizes it. But Joe, this isn't the first time. Ask him why he signed the MOU. Well, hell, he told us. He was forced to sign the MOU because we were running out of oil. So he's already gone through this exercise. The first 39 days, we tried to bomb them in the submission, didn't work. We ran out of ammunition and we're running out of oil. J.D. Vance came out and said, yeah, the MOU, it's just to buy time to get more oil. So it was all like, so what's he going to do now? Is he just going to say we just need to have time for more oil? That's why I just published a piece called Hybrid Diplomacy. We can't speak of normal diplomacy now. Diplomacy has simply become a mechanism of controlling chaos. And the Trump administration appears to want nothing more than chaos in the Middle East, which is why we have to be careful about the president saying he's woken up. Woken up to what? He's actually, I think, in his mind, achieved a great victory because there's chaos. He just now has to find a better way of managing this chaos. And so hybrid diplomacy is going to kick in, the artificiality of negotiations, but don't believe that the president's trying to actually solve this problem. The problem has been solved through the chaos that he has imposed, not just on the Middle East, but the world. There's a larger picture here. China, what we're doing to Chinese oil supplies. Although, again, there's two. I was somebody who was like, oh yeah, China's going to be putting pressure on Iran because China's going to be on the squeeze. And I had real Chinese energy experts come up and go, Scott, the Chinese have been preparing for this for decades. They have more energy reserves than you can shake a stick at. China's not even blinking right now. We will never exhaust China's energy reserves. Well, then this is hopeless. Why did the president do this? What's he trying to do with Russia? He's not going to exhaust Russia's energy reserves. So but they are trying to impose chaos. Why? Because we no longer have a rules-based international order that functions properly. We can't control the world through the rules-based international order. That has collapsed. And so we can't yield control of the world to a multipolarity, replacement, BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So how do we prevent these multipolarity from filling the vacuum created by the collapse of the rules-based international order? Chaos. And that's the defensive mechanism of the Trump administration right now is global chaos until which time they can figure out what they can do.
Just a quick aside, a question from our producer, Kathy, about Palantir. You said Trump's advisors are incompetent, but what about Palantir? They, despite their bravado, is there in their own incompetence that something to do with this?
Look, you're talking to a guy, Patrick. Here's where I'm going to throw it back to Patrick. Here.
Yeah.
AI. I just spent a week with some of the most fascinating people in the world. And we had talks about artificial intelligence. You're talking to somebody who hates artificial intelligence. I hate the concept of it, but I also believe that it just doesn't work, that it's a crutch and it leads to, bad results. Palantir, I think, is a facade. It's a fraud. It's a fake. And they have enough data where they can manufacture something that looks good, but when push comes to shove, Palantir will collapse just like everything will collapse because artificial intelligence isn't. It's just advanced programming, and it's only as good as the people who are programming it, and there's nothing good about Palantir.
You have something to add on that, Patrick?
No, not really. Just that quality and quantity are two different things, and AI delivers a lot of quantity, but it's lacking on quality. And when you're talking about specificity on targeting and things like that, that's when the problems set in. We already know that that's been a problem for the U.S. with their targeting of things in Iran. But more than that, just look at Israel's military operations. Look at Gaza. Look at South Lebanon. That's AI. I would wager to say a lot of that is heavily reliant on artificial intelligence, and it makes sense because people will be able to. This is one of the beauties of AI in the military world of today, where the rules of engagement are being thrown out the window. Is you can sort of defer to the AI. You can say, well, it gave us a 70% confidence rate on that as a viable target. So our policy, our corporate policy, our government policy, corporate, same thing. Our policy is we have to defer to that, and that's our policy. End of discussion. End of discussion. Move on to the next. I mean, that's the world that we're moving into right now, and it's positively frightening.
So you've just come back from Iran to cover the funeral of the Ayatollah. Tell us something about what you learned about the resilience of the Iranian people in this relentless attack now. And do the Americans understand that? Do they have that message? Do they know what they're up against here?
I can't speak for all Americans. I can speak for this American.
Yeah.
And being I would say sticking out like a sore thumb in a sea of angry Iranians. But I was there with them on the streets of Tehran and in Mashhad in the millions. I didn't have any security guards protecting me or anything like that. And I was received with great welcome, a lot of curiosity. A lot of people wanted to know what I was doing there. They wanted to know what I thought about X, Y, and Z. And it was, at times there were some challenging conversations when you're dealing with the general public. You don't know who's coming at you, and it's a very emotionally charged situation. Like the funeral of the supreme leader. It's a really intense. That's the best way I can describe it. An intense, emotional thing. And, you know, I can say a lot about, I mean, what Scott said about the religious component is absolutely central to everything. And I really felt I can only give you my superficial interpretation and my limited time I spent. Although I can tell you, I've been to the biggest anti-war protests in the world. I've been to Pope state visits. I have been to some of the biggest demonstrations in the world, including some of the biggest ones in Iran previously. Okay, so I have a good, I would say, reference for the scale. Nothing compared to what I had witnessed or experienced. The intensity, the sheer, it's like mourning and the passion. But and then you also have to pay attention to the symbolism. There were signs I started noticing. Everywhere, and in Arabic, Farsi, and in English, and it had an iconic picture of the leader's hand through the rubble. This is according to his son Mujtaba Khamenei, his successor as the leader. That this was the image when they were pulling the deceased leader out of his fist was clenched with his ring, iconic ring, and his tattered robe. And the slogan that was the theme of this week-long funeral was, "We must rise." So, and it was in English too. They had it in English as well as Farsi and Arabic. That's very powerful if you think about it. So it wasn't just about looking past and mourning. It was about looking forward. So I started asking a lot of people. I said, "What do you mean we must rise? Who is we, and you know what must rise?" And I got many different answers from that, which is interesting, and that's so typical of this nation of poets, artists, and literary scholars. I could say the same with Iraq and many other Middle Eastern countries as well, Asian countries. But they said that, you know, Iran as a nation must rise. As an anti-colonial kind of post-colonial force, as a sovereign nation. Islam must rise. Shia Islam, the message of, as Scott said, the nation of Imam Hussein, the martyr Imam Hussein. That is a central theme that you cannot tease away from any of this. It's absolutely, and that's the other thing is the religion, the politics, the history, the civilizational state, the morals, the ethics, all of that. It's one package. We become so cynical in the West because we have separation of church and state, and we just can't believe that anybody would write into their constitution, that any government in 2026 would write into their constitution that we're going to defend and liberate oppressed people wherever they are in the world. I mean, no matter what religion they are, we look on that with such cynicism, especially as Europeans and Americans. And we just think, oh, they can't be serious. They don't really care about the Palestinian people. They're just anti-Semitic. You know, this is the way we rationalize this. And the fact of the matter is, they do believe in that. And it's like a hive mind there. I cannot describe. I've never seen anything like it. It's like everyone is immediately connected on these issues, and Iranians specifically, and I've been all around the West Asia. This is different there. And they don't need to get like orders from the central office to they know when it's time to step up. This is the difference between Iranians and everyone else in the region. Is it as a nation? I'm not talking about everyone in the region, but as a nation, there is a level of cohesion and solidarity that has really been amplified because of the U.S. war. So, and another thing I realized after a couple of weeks there in this very intense time was that the Trump administration should take credit. They should pat themselves on the back. They did accomplish something. They thoroughly dismantled any opposition or Western-leaning liberal opposition in Iran themselves through their actions. I mean, so thoroughly. In fact, if they're going to give a trophy out for that, I think Trump needs to get, the FIFA director should give him a medal or give him some special award for eliminating the Iranian opposition. Him and Netanyahu have just done that incredibly. But just the resilience is real. They're a resilient, it's a resilient society, and it's a resilient civilization. And, you know, the penny has to drop for Americans at some point. Why? How can this be a resilient civilization? 3,000 years? I was reprimanded because I said 3,000 years, and some Iranians said, no, five. See, but they must have some qualities, innate qualities, that have allowed them to be a resilient civilization. I mean, does that even come into our calculus in the West? I mean, they actually have inherent qualities as people, as a civilization, and then we need to understand what those are, and we have to respect those, because those have, you know, thousands of years behind them. There is a collective sort of cohesion, a mindset, and in the Islamic or the Shia Islamic era, some of these aspects and characteristics have been refined and into this kind of ethical and moral doctrine that you're seeing through the revolutionary government post-1979. This is the government that the people had a referendum and chose for a specific reason. You need to see that. But what we've been given in the West is the diametric opposite of propaganda, and this is the most dehumanized, thoroughly mischaracterized population and country. One of the most, anyway. I don't want to say the most because there's so many, but by the West and the U.S. specifically, everything we've been told, especially their leader. I mean, the Americans, the way he's portrayed by Fox and Jesse Waters of the world and all these sort of very crass U.S. pundits, is that because he has a turban and a beard, he must be a terror mastermind. Ergo, it's okay that we assassinate him and his family. And nothing could be further from the truth. He was a scholar in Western literature, as well as Persian literature, as well as everything else. I saw his book collection. I was in his home in Mashhad, very austere. I mean, it's like something where Gandhi would have lived. You know, it's the basics. But some of his books were still there, and it's Victor Hugo. It's, you know, all of the sort of Western classics that we would have to read to get a degree in English literature. He's fluent in all of this. You read his writings on his website. This is a very sensitive, thoughtful philosopher, religious leader, and he was the godfather of the country for 2 generations. And so this is a great loss. And what is the justification for us killing him and his family? There's not even an attempt at some kind of a rationale other than this was the head of the snake and he is the terror mastermind. He's micromanaging Iran's proxies, terror proxies. This Disney level caricaturing of the leader, the country. Nothing positive can come from this, but this is like 24/7, anything related to Iran. I could say the same. We could do an analysis about Russia, same thing. We can talk about how Hezbollah or the Palestinian resistance organizations, I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, but it's along the same lines. When you go on and you witness this, 40 million people took part in this funeral over a week. That's like almost half the population in one way or another took part in this. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. You can't even get 1 million people out in the street for a state funeral in the West in any major country. It's just impossible. They came out 15 million in Tehran, according to the Financial Times. Okay. And I was amongst the middle of it. And I'm going to tell you, and it was there were a lot of red flags for vengeance, and there's old ladies waving those flags as well as young people, and a lot of former liberals waving those flags. Okay. So, and the Americans will look at that, Joe, and say, oh, look at, they're saying death to America. Oh my gosh. Why do they mean us harm? Well, what did you expect? You killed their Pope. And for what? And for who? And you're shocked that people want to avenge the death of their leader? I mean, Americans are just living in such a incredible imaginary virtual space between their minds that they just can't bring them. The government has never said death to America, by the way, the Iranian government. This is what you hear at mosques, some rallies, and so forth. Okay, and you see it on the streets. But do you blame them? Honestly, when they say death to America, they mean the American regime. Okay, but clearly they're not wanting to kill all Americans, because nobody showed any aggression towards me at all, and I was literally interfacing with thousands of people myself physically. I was alone at some points with people mourning the death of the leader killed by my government. Okay, and I did not feel threatened at all. At any time, but I was very aware that it's a very emotionally sensitive moment. But I'm telling you, we have underestimated these people, this country, this government, their political system. They have checks and balances. They have a sophisticated civil society. They have institutions. We have grossly underestimated every single aspect of Iran. That's the best thing I can say. I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears of Americans.
That was excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Yes.
I just throw that. First of all, thank you, Patrick. I mean, if you see green envy on my face, it's because I'm envious of the fact that you got to be in Iran and see that. And I wish more Americans could go to Iran and see what you witnessed. One of the things too, here in the United States, we call ourselves a constitutional republic, but we've abandoned the institution of constitutionality. We function as a cult of personality, as a dictatorship, anything other than a constitutional republic. Iran is a constitutional republic, and one of the reasons why, what Patrick is talking about, it's 5,000 years of culture that has been institutionalized in the form of an Islamic republic, and the people are the Iranians are better Iranian citizens than the Americans are American citizens. The Iranians know their republic, they know the institutions, and they believe in them, they support them, and it's not it's not an Islamic dictatorship. I mean, again, as Patrick said, we look at a turban and we look at a beard and we go, oh my God, ignorance. But actually, when I look at a turban and I look at a beard, I say that's 30 or 40 years of some of the most stringent studying, academic studying, religious studying. These fiqh is a term, and fiqh is it's not just about religion; it's the human understanding of faith and how faith guides life. And these guys, the Ayatollahs, they study the Quran, they study the Sunnah, which are basically the teachings and actions and approval of the Prophet Muhammad told through eyewitnesses, stuff called ijma and qiyas. They have to say, this isn't superficial. This isn't like an American getting a PhD in 5 years. That's superficial knowledge. We prove it by everyone walking around with a PhD saying, I'm a doctorate from whatever university. I'm an expert. You're not an expert. You're nothing. You have superficiality. You cheated. You drank your way through college, whatever you want to say. These people study. They have to go to a hawza learning. There's a board of religious experts who quiz them the whole time. And then the ultimate test is, I guess you have to form a marja. You have to go out there and you have to write your theory of religion as it applies to life. And you have to convince the people that you're a man that they can come to to seek guidance and faith. And if you can't attract a marja, you're not the big boys. You don't get to join the big boy club. Iran is in many ways far more democratic through their religious practices than we are, because it truly is the power of the people that make the Ayatollahs relevant. If the people don't support the Ayatollahs don't get to be Ayatollahs. because they don't get to appoint themselves. I mean, this is the amazing thing. And right now, like I said, I have superficial, book learning from afar. Man, I want to go to Iran and just immerse myself in this, because I just think that if I could go there and I could see how they have embraced their constitution, their republic, that there's lessons to be learned about citizenship. We don't need to bring religion, but everybody's like, they got the Guardian Council, they got the Assembly of Experts. Religion is a bar. Money's a bar here in America. You can't do anything in America politically without money. So we have a bar. We've just decided that money, shame on the Iranians for making faith a bar for for higher office. Shame on them for putting standards derived not from superficiality, but a deep understanding of how religion interacts with humanity on a national basis. Are they perfect? Nobody's perfect. But the reason this nation of Iran is standing together, stronger today than they have ever been in the entire history of the Islamic Republic. If we thought we were weakening them, Patrick is an eyewitness to the fact that we aren't. They are stronger, and it's because of their faith. And maybe the American people need to have faith in our Constitution the way they have faith in their religion. We're a nation 250 years old. Yes, we don't have 5,000 years, but you don't need 5,000 years. You just need to believe in who you are. We don't even know who we are in the United States. The Iranians know exactly who they are.
Yeah, and Scott's is right. It's more of a bottom up. The supreme leader has a direct connection with the people. That's part of his role, actually. And it's a different system. It's a very unique system, and it kind of works in a way, and it's efficient in a certain way, because they have the same consensus building pools of institutions and people and politics that we have. Our consensus building system. Russia has a certain consensus building system. Russia has a massive national security, civil society, and vertical institutions, plus all sorts of other institutions, that creates this giant consensus pool that distills down complicated ideas and that become votes for policy. Iran has this as well, but the people are more engaged in the democratic process in Iran, I would argue, than Americans are in their own system, or that Europeans are, definitely more than Europeans, and British. So because the leadership are very concerned with the way the people are feeling and thinking on all of these main issues, and the debate is rigorous, and it's nuanced, and it's detail oriented. The Iranians are tireless analysts and political debaters. They have unlimited energy. There's no exhaustion threshold on this for Iranians. So that, in a certain way, and they do have opposition there, and things do get heated. And I would argue that's a sign. Those are signs of a healthy democratic environment. Personally, I don't want to say system. I'll just say environment, ecosystem. So we think that there's no consensus building there, that it's top down. It's not. It's absolutely the other way around.
I just also say this, that we are prisoners here in America of our own prejudices, and that we have built an image of the Middle East or West Asia that is Gulf Arab centric. The Gulf Arabs are the most fake people in the world. They're fake nations with fake leaders. They were put in place by the British to maintain neo-colonial continuity of control. The United States has moved in, but there's nothing real about Saudi Arabia. There's nothing real about the United Arab Emirates. There's nothing real about Bahrain or Kuwait. There was something real about Syria. I mean, one of the great tragedies of the fall of Assad isn't the fall of Assad; it's the collapse of the Syrian nation, which is a nation that had potential to be the Arab equivalent of Iran. Nasser tried to bring it in Egypt. We crushed that. Saddam tried to bring it in Iraq. We crushed that. In Syria, the Damascus, Aleppo centers of culture are as rich and deep and vibrant as, you know, the things that exist in Iran, but we destroyed it by letting this head chopping fanatic named Jolani come in and roll over it. But our prejudices, we call them ragheads, we call them sand inwards, we call them a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, this is applied to, you know, our ignorance of Gulf Arabs and Arabs in general. And then we try to take this prejudice, hate-filled vitriol, and we apply it to the Iranians. You know, even if we were accurate about the Arabs, and we're not accurate about them at all. There is no comparison between the Arab world, especially the Gulf Arab centricity that dominates our thinking, and Iran today. Iran is a completely different universe, populated by a completely different culture, a completely different approach to life, I mean, it's totally different. And yet the people that are making policies today are the ignorant supporters of Zionism who think that there's that you know, Gaza is Tehran. You know, it's not. And then they, you know, get into superficial, you know, connectivities between Hezbollah and Iran without understanding the complicated history that exists there. Um, but the ignorance, that's the thing I'm trying to point out, is that we just don't understand Iran because we don't have the skill set to understand Iran, but we also have corrupted our potential by saying, you know, one raghead is the same as the next raghead. I mean, I'm just being overly simple, but you get people like Sarah Adams and you know, who a former CIA analyst who, you know, made her name in Benghazi and now has just been spreading Islamophobia throughout the United States. Laura Loomer is, you know, in addition to her recent conversion to Zelensky, you know, she's just spreading Islamophobia. These are people who don't even know what Islam is. I mean, they can barely spell Islam, but they don't know anything about the cultures they're talking about, the religion itself, and they're just spewing hatred, hatred, hatred. And this is why Iran's going to win, because they're better than we are. They're better people than we are. They're a better culture than we are. They're a better society than we are because they're true to their beliefs. They're true to their beliefs, and they and until we learn to respect that, we're never going to be able to defeat them, and I don't want us to defeat them. But more importantly, we're never going to be able to live in peace and harmony with them. Because to live in peace and harmony, you actually have to view people as humans and have a total understanding of who they are, what they believe in. It doesn't mean that that becomes your belief system. It means that you respect their belief system for them. And we have to learn to respect the Iranian people. We have to learn to respect everybody. But especially right now, Iran, the harm we're doing to that nation, the physical harm and the emotional harm. You know, I was in Starobelsk, and you know, the 21 dead, so the harm done to those families, and that, you know, it's real. I mean, you talk to the people who have buried children and, you know, buried loved ones, and in the West, you know, we have our tragedies where we bury people. We have murdered tens of thousands of Iranians in this war. Murdered tens of thousands of Iranians, most of them innocent civilians. And yet we Americans walk around and think it's insignificant because they're not really humans, are they? They're Muslims. They're ragheads. They believe I mean, what some of the things, they're savages. To call the Iranian people savages, I mean, my God, how you couldn't be more wrong. These are some of the most noble, cultured people in the world. They're not savages. And we call them this. The fact that these people didn't rip you apart, Patrick, because of where you come from, is a testimony to who they are as human beings. And I wish we could be that. I wish we, because look what we did to Muslims after 9/11. Hell, look what we did. The ignorance, what we did to Sikhs after 9/11. They have a turban. They must be Islamic. The ignorance that's manifested in everything about the United States is that which is going to ultimately destroy us if we don't turn it around. And one of the first things we have to do to turn around is we have to learn to love the Iranian people, and we have to learn to love the Russian people. And now we have this wave of communism going, anti-communism. We have to learn to love the Cuban people. We have to learn to love the Chinese people. We have to learn to love humanity. This country, this country of mine, country of ours, is so full of hate right now. And hate is the thing that triggers hate is fear, and the thing that triggers fear is ignorance. We have a duty and responsibility to become informed about the world we live in. And if we would do this, the world would be a much better place. And Patrick, I hope you can find a way to capture your experience in Iran and bring it to the American people to let the American people know what you saw there, so that we can begin that process of undermining the hatred that the Trump administration is seeking to use to control us all.
Yeah. No, I'm sharing as much as I can on podcast platforms, but